What's up, everybody? Dustin with Bully Detail and Automotive Repair. Today we got a Jeep Liberty in the shop. This Jeep Liberty came in for a coolant leak. The customer also requested an oil change. To determine where the coolant leak was coming from, it looked like there was the petcock or the coolant drain valve actually blew out. It kind of red flagged that for me. That typically doesn't happen unless we have some sort of pressure built up in the coolant system. So I found a petcock and I replaced that. I replaced also a coolant line after pressure testing it. And then I went to go do the oil change and I found that there was a tremendous amount of condensation on the oil cap. Which typically that's okay, because you should really always replace this O-ring right here. And a lot of people don't, so water sometimes drips in there and it causes condensation, and when oil and water mix, it creates like a milky white substance. That's because coolant consists of ethylene glycol or water, and then polyglycol and water. However, the temperature on the vehicle reached dangerously hot. So instead of just sending it out after the coolant leak, I wanted to pressure test it, make sure that there was no leaks, and then do a combustion test, just to determine if the gentleman destroyed his head gasket because he drove it too hot. So what this is a tester to test if there's combustion gases in the coolant. So this will change color and bubble up and show us if there is combustion coming up through the coolant system, which I would have to say that I believe that there is, because petcocks just don't blow out like that. So right now the color is blue. If there's any type of combustion gases in there, it'll change to green or yellow, meaning that it's got a head gasket. So it usually takes a couple minutes for it to build pressure up and kind of see if there's any type of bubbling in there, which is, I'm hoping that we don't see, but if we do see it, then we know that not only did the customer have the coolant leak due to the head gasket, so we're trying to find the root cause on why the petcock blew out. I don't believe that it was just loose or anything else like that. I do believe that there was an excessive amount of pressure within the radiator.
What should you do if your car is heating up too much?
Once it reaches past operating temperature, you need to pull over immediately. The reason that you do that is because anytime that you're going above temperature, you're seeing that these heads are made of aluminum, and aluminum takes on heat but dissipates heat quick. So when you reach that dangerously high level of temperature, it can't really dissipate that heat. It expands and contracts fast, eating away at that gasket. So when you do see that something is overheating or something isn't right, you pull immediately over. Find out if it does in fact have a coolant leak. Just take a look around the vehicle and see if there's any noticeable issues with it. If the coolant reservoir is completely empty, fill it up, wait till it cools down, and then you can drive it. I do not recommend even driving it 10 miles if it's overheating. However, sometimes people are caught in a bind. They never really want to pay for the tow bill. But in this instance, if it is a head gasket, instead of paying for the tow bill, now you're going to pay for a quadruple the repair.
So how much is a head gasket repair typically?
A head gasket on something like this is probably roughly around $1,500.
Why so much?
Well, you got to take the intake off. You got to take all the accessory drives off. You got to make sure everything's lined right. You got to pull the heads, determine which head is leaking. So it's more than just, okay, let's take one of the heads off. So there is procedure that you do have to follow.
So this is a pretty labor-intensive
This is
repair?
very labor-intensive. That's with any vehicle that you have to do a head gasket on. So some of the tall tale signs of a head gasket is you could be blowing smoke out your tail end. And usually, typically, it's a white. That means that the oil and coolant is mixing. So we can.
What's the big deal if you just run your car with a head gasket leak?
Yeah, you'll end up causing milky oil and coolant mixture within the engine. You can't lubricate the bearings properly. You'll have internal engine failure at some point. It is never recommended to, if you know there's a head gasket, you can't drive with it. If you do, you're really asking for problems. So if we actually scroll back over here to the combustion tester, it did confirm that we do have combustion gases in the coolant system. So this is the color that it started off. That's the color it's changing. Right now I filled it up to here, and you can see that the pressure is already building up. As I put my finger here, you can continually see that it's exceeding where my finger is. And at some point it'll get so much pressure, it'll reach the top, and it'll start coming out of this overflow here. Which is exactly what I thought happened with the petcock and why it blew out. There was overpressure in the system. This is not a good sign for the customer. But instead of us fixing the coolant leak and sending it on its way and then having an issue come back, we went ahead and took a look at it and determined that you got a head gasket. It's an unfortunate situation for this gentleman, but it could have been probably avoided if the vehicle wasn't running hot. I don't think it was this last time that it was running hot, because the gentleman stated that one of the coolant hoses blew on him around 4 months ago. So I would imagine that at that point is when it started. So right now we definitely have the mixture. It's already rising. You can see that it's going to start hitting the top. No good. One of the things, you know, I can't stress out enough is when you start overheating, pull over immediately. It is not a good situation. So right now I have to button this thing up, explain to the customer what's going on with it. In the meantime, you guys have a good night.